in session?
No.
Sure.
Just a second. Ok. Per chi parla italiano, vi presento brevemente Aaron e Lila Turner, perché si presenteranno da soli. And for the English, for people who speak in English, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to introduce you Lila and Aaron Turner.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. It's great to be here. For those of you that in Italy, we would love to be there too.
Oh, yeah, very much.
So we'll introduce ourselves a little bit. I'm Aaron Turner. In terms of the three principles, I happened to come across them when I was in my late teenage years, but didn't really take much notice because I thought it was silly. And then years later, when I actually took a serious interest, I started to realize that Sydney Banks had made some really key discoveries, that the way that the three principles talked about feelings and experience and clarity of mind included information that didn't exist anywhere else that I'd come across. And when I started to take that information seriously, my understanding and my experience of my life changed completely. And one of the areas of my life that changed completely was relationships. It completely simplified my understanding of relationships. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And before the principles, I was a researcher in anthropology. I worked at a university. But when I realized what a difference an understanding of mind, consciousness, and thought, which we'll talk about in a bit, makes to people and to the world, I decided I wanted to spend my time making this understanding more visible. So I've been doing that now for 21 years and working with individuals, couples, families, businesses, the military, anyone who's willing to listen.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Lila Turner, and I came from a background of fashion design and women's wear. And so when Aaron and I first started dating, I was studying women's wear. And so for the first 20 years, I don't know, I've lost track of. Anyway, the bulk of my career, Aaron did very early on. When we started dating, Aaron started to take more of an interest in the principles, and I continued working in fashion. And it was what he liked to do, and it was very separate. Excuse me. And now, quite a turnaround, we work together. So I took an interest about 8-9 years ago, maybe. And I saw there was something under my nose that I hadn't understood because I hadn't really been listening. So I thought that the things that Aaron worked with and was learning about only helped certain people, because everybody seemed very goofy and very happy. And I felt very serious about life. So I felt like that just put more responsibility on me to try and make sure everything got done. But I liked what he did, but I didn't really understand it. And I didn't know that wasn't because there was something wrong with me. It was because I wasn't really listening. I was listening through what I already believed. If I'm talking too fast, please put it in the comment and I'll slow down. And so we work together in One Thought. So we have been working together for about 8 years. I partner with One Thought with Aaron, and I also have a sister company called Relationship Ready. That is all about relationships, dating, and finding a meaningful connection within the relationship that you're in, or finding a relationship in the first place. And so the topic today, the reason why we called It Takes One is because from the last, I don't know how many years, we've seen people come across the principles, because when we were first around it, it was a very small group of people. It wasn't common. Nobody knew who Sydney Banks was. And now you can go into hotel lobbies and see people reading his book. It's like, it's just got very popular now. But one of the themes that we see quite commonly is that people will come across the principles and it will stop them in their tracks, because they realize something about thought or something about their life that they've been doing that has been made up or unnecessary or unnecessarily, stuck in the mind. And so usually when people get first impacted, they get really still and the feeling is very good. So they get very grateful and they're very, wow, that felt so good. That felt so good in the body. It feels good in the mind. And then what we see very commonly, and we can both see, would have both done this, is that then people go, oh, they need to learn it. You need to learn it. My husband should learn it. My children should learn it. My boss needs to learn it. My employees, they need to have it. And we really wanted to talk about the power of, well, what if it takes one to change things, and to stop just for a moment to consider, rather than trying to change everybody else that they should know the principles, what does it mean to look to yourself first? And does it, and what is the impact of it being just one person that knows something for a while to see what happens? So because we've seen that as a pattern, and we wanted to share a little bit about our own story, because we are really, it takes one. So the introduction for this, so our the reason why we're together 27 years later is because Aaron saw something about thoughts in his mind that meant that we ended up staying a couple. Within the first couple of months of dating, we were gonna not be a couple anymore. And what he saw changed the whole course of the last 27 years. And that took, I don't know, what would you say, like a 3-minute insight?
Yeah.
That changed the course of 27 years. And I had no clue. So didn't really understand what he knew, but it changed things. So I wanted to kind of pass over to Aaron to share what he saw. And then I can kind of contribute a little to share my experience of the person who didn't really know what the principles were and what he was talking about when he said it's all your thought. So I thought that might be a really nice full way to share the story from the inside of one person sees something and the other person doesn't, but what difference that makes.
It's really nice to see you guys. I know we can't see you, but to see your reactions, it's lovely. Thank you. So I was giggling because this title, It Only Takes One. Before I understood the principles, I thought it only takes one, but in my mind, it wasn't me. It was the other person. So I had a pattern in my relationships. I had a number of relationships, but all of them were 3 months, nothing longer than 3 months. So let's say I dated 7 people. All of those relationships were 3 months. Each one was 3 months. And I really wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to be with somebody. I wanted to have a close relationship, a romantic relationship. So I was very interested in that. And I was interested, well, why is every relationship 3 months? Each one was a separate reason why it didn't work. It wasn't the same every time. It was different every time, but yet always 3 months. And usually it was something wrong with the other person. Either they didn't like me, they got bored of me, or I didn't like them. There was something wrong with what they were doing. And I would try to fix these relationships, but it would never really work. So when Lila and I first started dating, I don't know if you have this, but at the beginning of my relationships, there was a lot of enthusiasm and joy and love, and it worked very well in the first few weeks, and then things would start to go less well, colder or more awkward or whatever. And just in the middle of that time, George Pransky, who was my uncle, asked me to go and research the work he was doing. Remember I said I came across the principles when I was a teenager? Well, it's because I would visit my aunt and uncle, and they taught the principles. But I'd never been interested. But he wanted to pay me to research what he was doing. So I went and I was learning about the principles because I was being paid to be interested. So I was discovering, wow, they think that you are underneath all your thought, you're mentally healthy. Underneath all your thought, you have well-being. That's what they think. And the only thing that gets in the way is the thoughts that you have. And they only get in the way if you believe them. So that's what I was learning. Meanwhile, Lila was backing away. So when I would phone her up, it wouldn't go very well. So I started to worry that the relationship was falling apart. And it was about 2 months. So it was perfect for my pattern. And so I got desperate and anxious. So when she would pull away, I would call more often. And when I would call more often, I was insecure and desperate, and I would make it worse. So it was going very badly. Things were breaking apart. And one day I was going on a drive with my family, and I wasn't thinking about my relationship. And because I didn't have any upset thoughts on my mind, I was feeling really good. And as I was sitting there, it came to my mind, oh, your relationship's in trouble. What are you going to do? And I was about to start, when you worry and you start to ruminate, and I was about to start thinking. And I realized, well, what if I don't do that? So I'd never seen myself thinking before, so I never knew I didn't have to. I thought, oh, I won't do it. And when I didn't do that thinking, I came right back into the moment and I started feeling good again. And I learned for the first time that it was following my thinking made me feel bad. And if I didn't follow that thinking, there was nothing to make me feel bad. So for the next few weeks, I felt really good. And I forgot we had a relationship problem. And in a way, all the negative thinking that was making me feel bad went away. And what I learned from that was that when my mind is clear, I see things clearly and I feel good. And when I have disturbed thought, it makes me feel bad and I can't see clearly and I can't think clearly. And I remember realizing, oh my God, all that upset thinking, if I listen to that, it ruins my relationship. That's what ruins my relationships. It's me. It's not the other person, it's me. So, and I realized, oh, my relationships are not in danger anymore. If I don't trust my bad thinking, my disturbed thinking, there's nothing to ruin my relationships. I realized I used to think relationships were complicated. Then I realized they're simple. If I listen to my clear thinking, my wiser thinking, and I don't listen to my disturbed thinking, there's nothing to spoil my relationship ever. So I wanted to tell Lila this. So on the phone, I tried to talk to her about it, but the way I don't know, I was maybe trying to shove it down her throat, which maybe people don't like, I don't know. And so I realized I'm going to have to look after my state of mind to look after the relationship. That's the only thing that matters. So in our relationship, if I was feeling bad, I would feel sensitive. And if I would feel sensitive, I would get upset. And I started to treat it like, oh, that's your problem. Your mind's not helping you. So you don't want to listen to that. So when I felt really upset and really impatient and really gripped, I would stop listening to myself. And what I found was when I stopped listening to myself, I would start to come out of it and I would start to feel better. And the only thing that was making me feel bad was my own thoughts. And when I felt bad, everything looked worse. So when I felt bad, Lila looked wrong and mean and everything seemed really bad and it was all really urgent. But when I didn't feel that way, it all came back into focus like a camera. And I that was my strategy for navigating our relationship, was to take responsibility for what thoughts I listened to, and to try to remember that when I was upset, it was coming from my mind because my mind was disturbed, and to try to not blame it on Lila, and to try to not blame it on the relationship. Is that good?
Yeah, no, it was a bit in there I haven't heard before, but that's interesting. So just from my experience, so the person who doesn't know what he's seeing, when we first started dating, it was very thoughtless, meaning it was very natural. It was just really obvious how to be with each other. We didn't even have to make decisions at first. It was like everything, we just did things naturally together. It's like we didn't really become a couple. We just melted. We melted and we were together, and it was really nice, because I think I'd never really felt like that in a relationship before, because I'd never felt as soft or as unself-conscious, or I hadn't felt on guard. And that was for the first couple months, and I just felt really like I didn't, none of it was like planned. It was just really lovely. But as Aaron says, he started to kind of care more about the relationship, and started to look for signs that it might be falling apart. And so my side is, I've just met this lovely guy. I feel really good with him, and he's starting to call a lot, and it's a bit weird. And he's starting to feel needy down the phone. And you know, when people like are with a relationship and then they dump them, they say, "Oh, I didn't know what they were like. Turns out they're a real weirdo." I was like, "Oh God, I didn't know he was like this." So I started to see a different person step in the room, and I felt quite alarmed. Now, it was subtle because I'm kind of sensitive, but it was like I started to feel like something was needed of me, and I started to feel very, very pressured and a little bit panicky. So I was very confused, because it wasn't who he was when we first started dating. And so while he's away, I'm just feeling a bit like, okay, when he comes back, I don't want to date this person. I like the first guy, this guy, not so much. He's freaking me out. It's just like, if we're in a bar and I just met him, I would have find the toilet or find the back door to get out, you know. But it was weird because we'd been so naturally nice. And so I kind of decided, you know, when he gets back, I'm pretty sure it's done. Now, my relationships lasted a year, so that was early for me. Mine was shelf life. A year, nothing past a year, done.
My pattern beats your pattern.
I know, but like I was like, this is early for me. And so I said, can you come over? Like come over, kind of, so I can break it off. But I really remember this, when Aaron walked in the room, all of that was gone. And not only was all of that sort of slightly weird, intense, kind of anxious feeling, but he felt really, really at ease in his own skin. I felt no pressure. That's what I really remember feeling, is like there was no pressure to please you or give you anything, or like my head and response to your intensity was I felt pressure, and that was utterly gone. Like it wasn't in the room. And you literally looked different. So you'd always been very contained, but you looked like somebody had, I don't know, given you a really fancy apartment that you were living in. Like your own body felt like a really fancy apartment. Like your skin looked different. Your eyes had all of this life behind them. Like he had this natural energy in life. Like his eyes looked so shiny and bright and energetic. And I was like, whoa. And this is a kind of like a feeling thing. There was nowhere to go from there. I couldn't go back to my thinking about something's wrong, because it was so clear something was different. And so I just didn't entertain that question again. Should I, shouldn't I, should we be a thing? And then we kind of moved along with our relationship. So it was a very tangible feeling of you showing up with almost nothing on your mind.
Yeah. And that's literally what had happened, is when I realized it was me thinking my insecure thinking, and I discovered how much better it was when I didn't do that, I'd forgotten that whole reality. I'd forgotten that Lila wasn't into the relationship anymore. I'd forgotten that that was a problem. I literally disappeared from my entire reality. So when she called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to get together?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds really fun." I was really looking forward to it. And we had a really nice time. We had a really nice time.
And I think from there we ended up moving in together. And then it was interesting. There have been times where I would kind of kick in kind of serious thinking. So with Aaron having more of an understanding, so at this point he was starting to navigate his own internal thought system, meaning starting to see, okay, what's optional inside of me. I didn't understand it, so I would go in and out of fluctuations of mood. So I wasn't very easy to be with. So I was really loved you, but I was super intense and very reactive. So I'd get very moody. I'd get kind of like really grouchy. I'd get really intense. I'd get very critical. Like I'd feel overwhelmed. So instead of you feeling like you're overwhelming me, it would become like a messy house or something wasn't wrong out there. And I'd feel really overwhelmed and then kind of take it out on you. So it was during, It Takes One. It was interesting from my perspective to watch him learn and go deeper with the principles. So when I would be struggling, so like really overwhelmed or upset about something, one of the first few things he used to try was, "It's just your thought."
I think that was phase 2. I think that might be phase 2.
It's just your thought. And for someone who is in a lot of pain and someone says it's just your thought and there's no deeper resonant grounding, there's no understanding, there's no listening, there's no being present with you, because he went, "Oh, quick, apply the principles," I'm guessing, I just wanted to throw something at him. That's not what you want to hear. I was ready to pick up a shoe and hurl it across the room, because if you're struggling and someone just says, "Oh, well, that's just your thought," and there's no love or compassion or intuitive about that, it's kind of like, "Oh, well, apply the principles here." It doesn't go down well. So I think you learned pretty quick that you couldn't fix me.
Am I interrupting you?
No, go ahead.
Well, from my perspective, I was switching between two understandings. I don't know if this will make sense, but I was switching between two understandings. There was an understanding that I got from the principles that opened up a whole new reality. And that was, if I don't hold on to my upset thinking, there's nothing to stop me feeling fantastic. And actually, when I don't feel fantastic, my mind is not helpful. It's disturbed, it's distorted, it's not trustworthy. So that was my first understanding. And when I followed that, everything was perfect. When I followed that, everything was perfect. And it would uncover the truth of a situation. So, for example, if we had an argument, or if Lila got upset, or if you were angry or something, and I would feel bad, my thought would tell me, "You feel bad because Lila's upset, or because Lila's not talking to you, or because Lila's angry." That's what my mind would tell me. But if I followed the principles, it would be, no, that's impossible. That's not true. You're experiencing your thought, and your feeling tells you whether you're thinking clearly. And I would think, no, that can't be right. How can you feel good if someone's angry with you? And then it would occur to me, well, you just do. It's your thought. Either your thought, you're feeling your thought, or you're not. So I would think, well, if that's true, I'm upsetting myself by holding on to my thought. It's nothing to do with Lila. If I wasn't holding on to my upset thought, I would just feel myself, peace of mind, I'll feel happy. So I would try it. I didn't believe it, but I would try it. So I would just let go, just loosen up and let go of my thought. And I would discover I feel fantastic. I feel really good. I feel loving again. I felt happy again. I felt content again. And it showed me that I was only ever up against my thought, and I could always set myself free. Now, when I did that, I didn't have a relationship problem, because when I was upset, I would react to Lila. And when I found my well-being, I would be compassionate, and I would look out for her, and I would try to be respectful, and I would navigate with a clear mind and an open heart. Then there were other times when my mind said, "Oh, Leela's upsetting you. She's being inconsiderate, or she's being mean. You can't feel better till she changes." And instead of going back to the principles, I would believe that, and then I would try and help her or change her so I could feel better. And it always made things worse, because Leela, like she said, she felt judged. I was not in a good place. I wasn't helping her because I cared about her. I was helping her to save myself. And it always made things worse for me, because if I say, "Oh, I'm feeling bad because of her," and I believe that, then I hold on to my thought, make myself feel bad, and then I blame her. It's all locked in. And then I approach Leela with a desperate judgmental feeling and a resentful feeling. Look what you did to me. Whereas when I come from the principles, I realize, oh, you didn't do anything to me. I'm listening to my own thinking. You can't hurt my feelings. I can hurt my own feelings. Thank you very much. So I would move between those two. And my learning was to catch myself when I was blaming Leela for my feelings, and to come back to my own responsibility.
I think it's a really interesting point. So when you in your mind think, well, they should learn the principles, is it because you really think, oh, that I could see it, I can see there's another way they could do things that might make things easier for them? Or is it they should learn the principles so I could stop feeling bad? If they learn the principles, I'd feel better. And I don't know if people see the difference, because I'm sure we've all had both, What was interesting about watching Aaron, so when we first got together, without the principles, we'd fight and then make up and feel good. And so I didn't really, when I didn't feel good, I didn't know many ways to feel good other than there'd be a big drama and then upset and tears, and then you get calm and then, and we make it better. And when Aaron didn't want to fight anymore, and I would be left on my own, which looked like a rejection in itself, but it was very funny. I could see over the years watching him, he was navigating something totally internally. So although I stayed quite erratic to a degree, because he got more neutral in his mind with the principles, I had less to get to work with. Do you know what I mean? So because he wasn't so reactive to his own thinking, we got into fights less. Like, it was important, like they say, it takes two to tango. It's really hard to fight on your own. And so I watched Aaron sort of bobble around with his understanding, get reactive, come out. And, this never excuses to be cruel to another person or to behave badly. This is never excusing that behavior. But what we're pointing to is the power of going to our own understanding in the face of everything. And the most empowering thing you can do is to have the ability to reset in yourself first and go from there. But I remember there was one point when I don't know how many years in it was, but I think my intensity and my moods had got a lot less because you weren't joining in. And so I would see you, and I remember this one point I got really, really angry about something really stupid, but it was really that I was overwhelmed in my own head, and it was like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and I just went into a bigger, this is all wrong, and look what everyone's doing, and everybody's stupid, and look what you did, and the more I'm talking, the more I'm going, and I'm dragging up dark, horrible thinking, and I'm kind of shouting. I'm shouting around the house, and I remember weirdly watching you. And you did your kind of shuffle in your head. And then I saw you, how people kind of settle down in a chair and then you got quiet. And then I saw you, I felt you do something, which was really a profound moment for me as someone who didn't really understand, is you got really unjudgmental. And I remember sitting there going, in my head, although I'm shouting, inside my head is saying, how can you not judging me? Because I hate myself right now. I just hated myself, and I couldn't believe that you didn't hate me. And I also, it was like a martial art moment. I was like, oh, he's really still. And I could feel in that moment that he was utterly unbullyable, which is a bit of a mean thing to admit, but like, I couldn't get to you because you were navigating yourself in such a peaceful, kind of self-accountable way. But something changed in me in that moment because I saw lack of judgment was possible. And it opened up the door for me to see, whoa, because I didn't understand the principles, but I could see you navigating it, and I could see and feel the difference in you. And that really left a mark on me, that was possible.
Yeah, I remember that time because it was another level of that. It's like I was seeing my reaction as partly related to your reaction, and then I went back to the drawing board. I'm like, well, that can't be. I have to have a relationship to my thought. And once what Leela's pointing to is, once you're willing to consider that you're feeling your own thought and nothing else, you're completely free to treat it however you want. You're free. So how you feel and the way you see things is determined by the thought that you listen to, not the other person. And that is so freeing to discover the power of a clear mind to show you any situation in a clear, loving, wise way. It's the ultimate freedom and the ultimate power. And the moment Leela's talking about it, I remember it as well, because I found another level. And I realized, see, I'd seen I shouldn't be mean and reactive, but I hadn't seen that I was judgmental. And the way I saw it was exactly that. When I wasn't upset with Leela, but I was judging her. That didn't feel good. It felt better than anger, but it didn't feel good. And when I said, look, when I had a very high standard for my clarity of mind, if I don't feel good, I'm not thinking clearly. All of a sudden, it became obvious. You're not thinking clearly. I know you think, well, that you're right, but you can't be right because you don't feel right. And then I discovered another layer, which was profound for me too. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this is, every minute you have the ability to see that you're experiencing thought, and every minute you have the ability to get freedom from that thought by not treating it as true, and find something deeper and more profound for yourself. And the only thing that gets in the way is the thought that you're experiencing is blaming itself on your job or the weather or the economy or your partner or your kids or your to-do list. And there's this just endless potential to see that it's just the feeling of a thought, and there's a deeper mind behind it. There's a whole nother feeling and space behind it.
And it's amazing, isn't it? And what's interesting about, I think, this story is, without me learning anything, the credibility of what you were learning, because you looked to yourself rather than try to change me.
Yeah.
I had so much more respect for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I really was like, wow. And my interest was peaking then, because I was like, how could he not react to this? I'm being really horrible. Or how could he not judge me? Or how can he stay steady? I mean, there was something I could feel that what you were doing and the direction you were going was empowering and deeper than what I understood. So without understanding the principles, the credibility of the principles were different. Go ahead.
Well, in my experience, when I saw the feeling coming from Leela, I felt victimized and trapped and persecuted. And when I saw it as a chance to have a different relationship to my own thought, it was such a thrilling joy. Oh, here's a chance to get past another one. It was actually enjoyable to have that, to get past that challenge. A completely different experience of exactly the same situation.
Go ahead.
Well, I was wondering, shall we, is there more you wanted to cover, or shall we take questions?
It might come up in the questions to see if people have questions.
So we thought it might be useful to have some time for questions. You can type questions into the Q&A box, and Maria can put them on the screen. I don't know if you have questions or anything you wanted to ask about or share with us. No, looking at the chats now, I see Liliana. Hi Liliana, nice to see you too, and Andrea.
Ragazzi, se c'è qualcuno che parla italiano e vuole scrivere una domanda in italiano, poi la possiamo tradurre.
The script, it was blurry, so I didn't hear what was.
Well, she was speaking Italian.
Oh, I didn't hear most of it.
I told them they can write the question in English, in Italian, and we can translate the question for you.
Or we can take a stab at it.
Well, we have a question from Liliana. How do your fluctuations in and out of understanding look like as a couple now? So I think we can each share about that. From my perspective, I don't know if this is the right word, but they're schizophrenic. So if I remember the principles and I am willing to see that I'm feeling my own thought, it feels like the opportunity to have a healthy relationship to my own unhealthy thought. So it feels fine. It feels like nothing to do with the relationship. Like my only challenge for my clarity and happiness and my perspective is my own disruptive thought. So if I have a healthy relationship to that thought, there's nothing wrong. And if I don't, then everything's wrong. There's no middle. So when I see that, it's all good. Even if I'm suffering, I don't blame it on anybody else or anything else. So it's not a problem. But when I don't see that, and I treat my fluctuations like I'm the victim of Lila or of, something in the world, I suffer and I'm victimized and I believe my own thinking and I complain and I'm upset. So it's really interesting. I guess what I'm trying to say is my clarity of mind and feeling is fluctuating all the time. And my understanding is visible, invisible, visible, invisible. So if I'm suffering and my understanding is invisible, I'm crazy and I don't know it. And if my state of mind is bad, but my understanding is visible, I just learn. It's just learning.
I mean, I have a different, I don't know if I would say it the same way. The surprise I have about having, because we have as much, I don't know, we have like moments where we're shirty, or, I mean, we parent together, we run a business together, we live together, we cook together, we do and the more accountable we are for ourselves, the more light and effortless that all feels to me. So one of the things I've noticed is when in the early years, if one of us didn't feel good, or particularly if I didn't feel good, my first reaction was to start worrying about the relationship or then the marriage, and to start analyzing, okay, what's the problem? What have I been missing? What have I not been responsible about? And I've noticed that as kind of we are both, the more I've learned, the less I think about the principles. It's like I don't sit and think and try and apply the principles. What happens is that I feel like I look to where I'm at, but that's pretty much it. So I feel like we're both allowed to have moods. And actually, once I started to take accountability that if I was uncomfortable with Aaron, it was me. Now you can be in a shirty mood, and I think it's super cute. But I started to find Aaron's tantrums adorable. It's like one of my favorite moods is when he stamps his foot and gets really uptight about something. I'm like, it's so cute. And I try not to laugh. Before, I felt like if he got upset, I was responsible. I was supposed to do something. Oh my God. And he's getting in my face and he needs something. And now I was like, oh, he's so sweet, because it looks normal to me that we have moods. I feel like there's a huge amount of space between us having permission to just have moods and be whoever we are. But because we're not analyzing and then trying to solve something based on a flighting mood, there's just like, there's nothing to hold it in its place. So the longer we've been looking in this direction, I suppose, for work, which means in ourselves, the less intervention we have. So you will almost never hear in our house, well, that's your thinking. Don't you think you're a bit in your head about that? Like, it just doesn't. So if one of us is, having a hard time, instead of saying, well, you're in your head, we might say, hey, want a cup of tea? Should we go for a walk? We're just kind of like, it's like obvious to be loving and just be there, because judgment doesn't belong. And if it does, judgment passes through. That's as silly as being neurotic about something silly. Like, judgment is a mood. So what? But it doesn't have analysis behind it. I don't tend to stick with it. So my experience of mood and fluctuations is we're generally not very in our head about them. So there's all this forgiveness. Like, there's this forgiveness. Like, I used to hold on to everything. And now, if one of us is a bit snarky, I'm like, ugh, anyway. And then you're back. And it's really lovely. It's really lovely to be able to not try and be in a good mood all the time or be loving all the time. Like, we're allowed to be people. We're allowed to be interested in different things. And I think as a result, like, I still every day really look forward to hanging out with you. Like, our kids are a third wheel quite a lot of the time because we're just really into hanging out. We're like, oh God, no, we love going to the movies together. And it's really enjoyable because the whole experience is very light.
I see something really interesting is when Lila started getting interested in the principles and stopped holding on to grudges, it was lovely to see, and it was really nice for me, but it wasn't the main event. It was like, oh, that's nice, because you think, oh, if they didn't do that, I'd feel better. Well, if you're looking after how you feel, then it's not. It's nice. It's a really nice thing. Our relationship's better, but the experience of it isn't different because of it. We have so many questions. So many questions. Where do we start, Maria? Yeah. So I'm more. Yeah. So what Mazio is saying is I can relate to after, but you might have something different to say about this, but in a way, once you learn the principles, if you're separating in order to feel better, you're looking in the wrong direction. It's not impossible to imagine someone feeling really good and feeling like they should separate. But if you're separating to change a feeling or to escape a feeling, then you're running away from the wrong thing. You should be separating from your own thought. You should be breaking up with your thought, not your partner.
Because of the work I do with relationships, I see a lot of people actually use the principles or whatever tool they have to talk themselves into staying in relationships that even in their quietest moments don't feel right. So you can misuse the principles to talk yourself into something. Oh, it's only thought. I've used the principles to be a nice person, and sure, they can have that, and they can do things that really didn't sit right with me. But I wanted to be a good person, and it's all thought, and so I should be reasonable and I should be good. And actually, if you just got me really quiet and said, does it feel right? It's like a yes or a no.
Mm.
So when working with relationships, I say you can't make a decision when you don't feel good.
Yeah.
You can't. In a way, you can only make a decision when it doesn't really matter either way, and your mind is really in neutral and you feel really good. And in another way of saying it, you've got nothing on it. Because when it gets really quiet, it's really simple.
Mm.
So my answer to that is, well, actually, you can love and appreciate anybody, you know, but it doesn't mean that when your mind gets really quiet, it feels right.
Mm.
Now, maybe other people would have different opinions about that, or that's controversial, but that's just been how I feel about it. I think you can, you know, misuse the principles in 1,000 different ways to talk yourself in or out of things. And that doesn't really allow for space for a quiet mind to see what actually deep down resonates.
Mm. Now, Maria, we have so many questions. Oh, okay. Dear Aaron and Lila, thank you so much for sharing your story of yourselves and the 3P. How did your understanding evolve? You mentioned went in and out. Any chance we can... do you want to talk to this one? Do you want to start? I like this question. It's a really, 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 really good question, Carl. Thank you.
You seem just jazzed,
I love
jazzed
it.
about it.
I might have like 7 answers going through my head. So there's 2 things to say, and they're contradictory. So one way of answering this question is, no, you cannot be connected to your healthy thoughts all the time. No, sorry. In exactly the same way as you walk around with your phone, the signal goes up and down. Buildings get in the way and you go into a valley, or, you know, it's inevitable that our clarity of thought varies. It's not solid, it's fluid. It's like a cloud. It's like, can you hold a cloud in one shape? No. If you look at a cloud and it looks like a dog, you have to look at it before it changes. You can't come back tomorrow and find the cloud that looks like a dog. So your healthy thoughts, your thoughts aren't always healthy. But you can have a healthy relationship to unhealthy thought. Always. Now, the second way of answering the questions is, of course, you're always connected to your healthy thought. Because no matter how unhealthy your thinking is, your clarity, your mental health, your mind is still there. So, yes, you're always connected, but we experience disturbance in the thought. So in a way, you're always connected to healthy thought, but you get this, you know, signal quality shift. And actually, when people try to stay connected to healthy thought, they get very upset and frustrated because you can't hold thought still. So in a way, it's healthier to accept that your thought fluctuates and kind of come to peace with it. And, you know, it's like when you ride a bike, you're never balanced, you're constantly adjusting. Not that you need to adjust, but anyway.
We can have more questions.
Yeah, we should we try and deal with one more question in the next 20 seconds? Oh, Lila, you should answer this. What happens when you feel that it is the right moment to face a problem? Thank you, Simona.
When you're super wound up and you can't bear it anymore, and you're ready to just lay that shit out. That's obviously the optimal time.
I knew you were going to say that.
That's just if you're tempted. I used to try and deal with issues with Aaron when I was like an 8 out of 10 wound up, agitated, frustrated, annoyed, judgmental, whatever. Never occurred to me to wait until I was a lot calmer, like at a 3 out of 10. So I think if you want a new outcome, then go under 3, 3 and below. You know, like 0 is really, really quiet and 10 is crazy. But if you want to get the same results, just go from a sort of 6 or above. It's really as simple as that. So the best time to deal with something is the state of mind you're in, And then you'll know when to find a good state of mind for the other person. So you'll know when is a good time to. So sometimes I'll say to Aaron, I got something I'd love to talk through, and I've got to a really good place about it, and I'm neutral, but I want to ask him, is it a good time? Should we talk later? And he'll say, look, not right now, I'm really busy. So just because I'm feeling neutral about it, I can't expect him to come out of the thought or the job he's doing. I'll say, do you have a minute? So I would say the good time to deal with things that matter depends on how willing you are to have a fresh perspective and a fresh outcome. But if you want to go in with your agenda and get with an expectation, the likelihood is you're going to be a bit more agitated. So I would say the best time to deal with something is when you are genuinely open to hearing something from the other person. Because hearing something allows for an organic nature in your conversation to happen. It allows for some kind of magic. It actually could have been a longer answer. It's a really nice question.
It is. And this actually, it's a pity because there's lots of really good questions. My temptation was just to like machine gun answer them all because you've got great questions. But I think we are out of time. Thank you so much for having us and for your chats, your questions, your kind of feedback as we went along. It's been lovely to talk with you. Yeah.
Do we have that right? It was out of
for
time,
you
right?
too. Yeah. Lots of love to you all.
We'd do one too if we knew how to.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking for it. Aha! Here we go. Boom. Thank you, Maria. What do we do? Oh, dear Lila and Lila, maybe you can give them a. How do you find the calm again when you're held hostage by? Do we have time to answer this question, Maria? I don't want to be a bad. I'm happy to, but 10 minutes, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah, Maria.
Okay.
Maria's the. Shall we? We do have 10 minutes.
Let's go. I mean, they're just going to cut us off.
Okay, so we'll keep answering questions till they cut us off. Okay, so let's go back to that question. If we have Maria, shut us off if we go too long, but we'll go back to Carl's question. So it's if you look at thought, Carl, there's the way it feels and there's the way it is, right? So it feels like the outside world is affecting the way that we feel, but actually it's coming from a thought. So for example, just to go back to relationships, I'm obsessed with not being late. And if we're leaving the house late, I get lots of anxious thinking. And it feels like I'm anxious because we're late. But if I don't trust that thinking, it fades and I feel perfectly fine, even though we might be late. So thought is tricky because it feels like something's coming from the outside, with actually it's just coming from a thought. Secondly, it feels like it's solid and real, but actually it's just the feeling of a thought and it goes away, right? Now, thirdly, it feels like thoughts grab onto us and hold us hostage. You know how you said, how do you not be held hostage by a thought? Well, the answer is to realize that that's a feeling. It's not true. A thought has no hands. It has no personality. It's just a feeling and a perception that we either trust, we think about, or we don't. So a thought cannot do anything to a person other than give them an experience. Okay? It cannot do anything. It feels like it can, but it can't. And our job is to realize, oh, if I feel like I'm being held hostage by a thought, I must be thinking it. I'm holding on to the thought. The thought can't hold on to me. And it's just, Lila might have a different way of saying this that will add a perspective to it, but the way that you stop being victimized by thought is to realize that the thought is neutral. It can't do anything. It can't do anything to you other than affect how you see things and how you feel. And it's us that hold on to it. It's us that listen to it. And then you'll notice that when you lose interest in a thought, that has a feeling of kind of letting go of it. And you can lose your trust and interest in a thought whenever you want.
I mean, my way of saying that, when you're really up against a very, very compelling, intense thought, like if something's happening medically or something really, 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 I mean, your mind will swear there's reasons, like this has all gone wrong. The first thing I kind of do with myself is realize, all right, I'm not going to get rid of this feeling yet. It's going to go now at some point, but the first thing isn't getting rid of the feeling. It's in a way cutting the tie between my belief that it's coming from the outside. So what I do is, my first response is to go over and get the scissors and cut the rope that says it's coming from the dentist or the bank account or the whatever it is, or like, you know, the kids' exam results or whatever it is that you're worrying about that feels really upsetting or intense. If I cut my belief that it's coming from there just even a bit, I'll still feel wrong, but it'll start, the air starts to come out of it. So for me, that's the first thing I do. I don't try and get rid of the feeling because I don't have a choice over how long the feeling lasts. But cutting the belief system is really helpful for me. Or the blame that it's coming from anywhere other than me. Did you want to do another question?
Yeah. We have time for another question.
Do you have another question? That's in Italian, right?
Maria, do you want to pop another question on there?
We have 4 minutes, Aaron and Lila. What would you like to do? Would you like to answer another question?
Say that again, Maria, because you were it wasn't clear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I will show you another question, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you.
We can close perfectly.
Dear Lila and Aaron, lots of people ask me a particular... Oh, no, we already answered that one, Maria.
Sorry. Wrong question, sorry.
Sydney banks seem to have a direct... I love this question, by the way. I was hoping we'd get there. I like them all, but... Sydney banks seem to have a direct understanding of these principles, like a direct experience that he then later translated into the 3 principles for us to understand. Seems we can either learn or directly experience that reality. How is it for you? Oh, such a good question.
Wow. I mean, I haven't got enlightened yet, so I wouldn't know. That's what I heard.
Nor have I, but I've got plenty to say.
Oh, okay.
Well, what's really interesting about the principles is it's a way of pointing to what we're all experiencing all of the time, and towards the essence of where it's coming from that we haven't experienced, because it's endless. So, I mean, what comes to mind listening to your question, Carl, is that, I mean, I think it's true, I'm making this up, but I think it's true that Sydney Banks really did see that the reality we see is not the reality. The reality is a spiritual energy brought into experience, our experience by thought. And I don't see that. I mean, I do treat what I see as if it's real. But the principles allows me to look beyond that and to appreciate what I'm experiencing from a different perspective. And what's interesting about your question, Carl, is sometimes I learn from insight, you know, those thoughts out of the blue and experience. And sometimes I'm just thinking about it, analyzing it. And what I've come to appreciate over time is when I'm thinking about the principles, it's very interesting, but it doesn't do anything for me. And when I'm not thinking about it, my experiences and my insight inform me more about the reality of it in a way that actually affects me.
And I'm wondering if I understood the question right.
Well, I just interpreted it however I wanted.
Good job.
Yeah.
Well, what I heard in that, I don't know how to kind of come across to not make Sid or anything to sound like a guru, but I really do think that he spoke with, he pointed in a very pure way to a direction of something that's behind life, if you like. So I feel like I get quite entertained by the principles of my learning, but whenever I listen to him or read one of his books, my experience is so not entertaining, it's moving. And I feel something come in, almost like a remembering rather than a getting. Because I get really, like, I think like, I find life entertaining, and I think I can do that with the principles too. Oh, that's cool, and that goes here and that goes there. But when I listen, like I just recently listened to, I recently read Second Chance, and it left me, I know that it did something because it left me still, and it left me considering something that I can't get together here. And I feel like it, to have resources like that that point you inside of yourself without a process is so magical. So I don't sit and cram and read everything and listen all the time. I do it when it occurs to me, but it really points me in a direction that I don't tend to go in myself. So I think it's very humbling for me to kind of go listen to something and not do it all the time, just sort of sparingly when I feel like it, because the sensation I get is a much purer, less complicated direction in myself. And I see my mind try and catch up with what I've just felt, and it never can. So for me, that's a good sign.
I think we really are out of time now. Thank you, guys.
It was such a pleasure. It was strange not to see people. Funny, I expected to walk into a room of people, but it was lovely to get your questions.
Maria close it.
Okay. Oh. Thank you so much. And I think I speak on behalf of the whole audience. You are fantastic. Thank you so much. And let me just say something to the audience. Allora ragazzi, ci sarà una pausa di mezz'ora, poi alle 15:30 ci sarà uno speed networking e poi ci saranno le sessioni finali alle 16. Grazie a tutti. We will meet in the backstage just a second.